They gave my retirement cake to the dog. No joke. My son-in-law laughed, said I didn't need the calories anyway. Everyone laughed with him. That was my send-off after 42 years of work. Not even a speech. Just cake crumbs on the patio and a dog licking the frosting. I sat there with a paper plate in my lap, staring at the half-empty punch bowl. My daughter didn't even look up from her phone. That was the moment I realized. I wasn't being celebrated. I was being slowly erased from my own life. You know, there was a time when that backyard was filled with real laughter. Not the forced, polite kind people wear like masks at parties, but belly-deep, tear-streaming laughter. Back when Marjorie was still alive. Back when Samantha was still my little girl, dragging her dollhouse out onto the porch, asking me to build her a castle instead. And I did. Every weekend, piece by piece. She didn't want store-bought toys, she wanted things made with my hands. She used to say, "Daddy, you make magic with wood." I believed her. I worked construction for 42 years. Same company, same calloused hands. There wasn't a week I didn't show up, rain or shine, sick or sore. We weren't rich, not even close, but we were steady, reliable. I built the house we lived in, every plank, every beam. Marjorie painted the shutters. Samantha picked the lilac bush out front. Every corner of that home had a memory nailed into it. Marjorie, God, she had this way of softening the whole world. She didn't talk loud, didn't need to. Her quiet was enough to calm a storm. I still remember how she'd stand at the kitchen window, drying dishes, humming Patsy Cline. I'd come in from the garage covered in sawdust, and she'd smile like I was some grand knight returning from battle. We had this ritual, Friday night meatloaf, her recipe. Then Samantha would crawl into bed with us for movie night. Sometimes I'd fall asleep with her tucked against my chest, and Marjorie would chuckle, "You two snore in harmony." It's funny how the smallest routines become the most sacred when they're gone. As Samantha grew older, the house grew quieter. That's normal, I suppose. Teenagers pull away, find new voices. But even then, she was never disrespectful. She'd still kiss Marjorie on the cheek, ask me to help with science projects. And every Father's Day, she'd make me a card. Hand-drawn. Crayon scribbles at first, then cursive words. To the best dad in the whole wide world. I kept them all. Still have a shoebox full of them in my closet. When Samantha left for college, Marjorie and I cried in the driveway. Empty nest, they call it. But we still had each other. We filled the house with new habits. Crosswords at breakfast, gardening on Sundays, slow dancing in the living room when her favorite records played. We hosted neighborhood barbecues. Our home became the warmest place on the block. People used to say, "There's something about your house. It just feels like love lives here." Marjorie passed away 10 years ago. Cancer. Quiet but cruel. She didn't complain, not even at the end. She worried more about me than herself. I remember the last real conversation we had. She gripped my hand, eyes glassy but sharp, and whispered, "Don't let the loneliness make you forget who you are." I didn't understand what she meant then. I do now. After she died, I kept the house just the way she liked it. Her robe still hangs on the back of the bedroom door. Her tea tin sits on the counter. I kept gardening, even though the weeds won sometimes. I'd talk to her out loud while watering the roses, tell her about the weather, about the birds at the feeder. It helped. Samantha came around less. First, just holidays, then sometimes not even that. I figured, she's busy, she's got her own life. She married Todd around year 3 of Marjorie being gone. I wasn't too sure about him, even back then. He shook my hand like he was doing me a favor. But Samantha was glowing, and that was enough for me. I offered to help them with a down payment, but they said they wanted to earn it on their own. I respected that. Later I learned they'd taken loans out the ears, lived beyond their means. Still, I stayed quiet. If they asked, I'd help. They rarely did. But Todd, he had this way of speaking that always felt like an insult wrapped in a compliment. The kind of guy who'd say, "Wow, it's amazing you still manage stairs at your age." Over the years, they started showing up more, but only when something needed fixing. The fridge, the deck, the furnace. Never just to talk, never just to sit. But I still had the house, my memories, my routines. And I still believed, maybe foolishly, that love, real love, couldn't just vanish. I thought Samantha knew that. I thought she still saw me the way she did when she was little. Her dad, her protector, her builder of castles. I didn't know how far I'd drifted from that version of myself until the day they fed my retirement cake to the dog. That day didn't just hurt because of the insult. It hurt because it made one thing painfully clear. All the years, all the love, all the quiet sacrifices, they'd forgotten. Or worse, they didn't care anymore. And somewhere deep down, I knew. It wasn't just about cake. It was about everything that came before, and everything that was about to come. It didn't happen all at once. That's what made it hard to see. The shift came in small, almost invisible cracks, things you could explain away if you wanted to. And for a long time I did. It started with the phone calls. At first, Samantha would call every Sunday morning like clockwork, just to check in, just to say hi. Then it turned into every other Sunday, then once a month, then only when she needed something. I'd answer, trying to keep my voice bright, hopeful. "Hi, sweetheart. How's everything?" She'd respond with that hurried tone like she was driving or folding laundry. "Good, Dad. Just crazy busy. You know how it is." I did know how it was, because I'd lived that kind of busy once, when I was working 60-hour weeks, coming home sore and sunburned, still making time to help her with her school projects, still going to recitals and soccer games. I was busy then too, but I showed up. Then came the comments. Todd was the master of those. We'd be sitting at the dinner table and he'd say things like, "You know, this house could be worth a fortune in a few years. Prime real estate." Or, "You ever think about downsizing, Pop? I mean, this place is kind of big for one guy." I'd smile politely, pretending I didn't hear the undertone. But I heard it. He wasn't suggesting for my benefit. He was hinting at their plans. Samantha never interrupted him, never pushed back. She'd just sip her wine and scroll her phone, nodding occasionally like she wasn't even really present. Then they started bringing their dog over more often. Big thing, shedding fur everywhere, scratching at my doors. They'd laugh it off when I tried to keep the dog out of certain rooms. "He's family too, Dad. Lighten up." They began storing things in my garage without asking. Boxes labeled Todd's Tools or Holiday Decor. One day I opened the shed and saw half my old lawn equipment gone, replaced by newer stuff. Todd said, "Oh, I donated the rusted ones. You weren't using them anyway." That got under my skin. Those tools weren't junk to me. They were mine. My hands had shaped things with them. But I didn't fight him. I didn't want to be the bitter old man who argues over rakes. Still, I started locking the garage after that. They never noticed. Another time, I mentioned I was thinking of fixing up the roof. Todd waved it off, said, "Why bother? You're not going to be living here forever." He laughed after he said it. Samantha laughed too. I didn't. One afternoon, I was in the kitchen making tea when I overheard them on the porch. They didn't know I was close enough to hear. Todd said, "I told you, we could remodel the whole thing once it's ours. Open concept, new counters, maybe even a home office." Samantha asked, "What about Dad?" Todd replied, "He's not going to live forever." I stood still for a long time after that. Tea steeping in the cup, untouched. I wanted to tell myself I misunderstood, that they meant it harmlessly. But something about the way he said it wasn't future planning, it was assumption, as if the house already belonged to them. From that day on, I started watching more closely. When they visited, Todd would wander around the house like he was inspecting it, measuring walls, tapping windows. Once, I caught him opening drawers in the hallway. When I asked what he was doing, he shrugged and said, "Just checking for drafts." Samantha didn't used to be like that. She used to sit with me and ask about my garden or read me funny texts from her coworkers. But now she barely made eye contact. She'd bring her own bottle of wine, pour herself a glass without asking, and scroll through her phone like I wasn't even there. One evening, I made dinner, Marjorie's old recipe, meatloaf and mashed potatoes. Samantha picked at it, barely touched her plate. Todd joked, "You know, Dad, maybe it's time for us to cook for you." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes, because I knew what he really meant. Maybe it was time I stopped pretending this was still my home. It's strange how a place can change without anything actually changing. The walls are still the same. The photos still hang where they always have. But the feeling, the soul of it shifts. That house used to feel full, not just of people, but of presence. Marjorie's laugh in the hallway, Samantha's footsteps on the stairs, the sound of a screen door closing gently behind someone you love. Now it felt like a waiting room. They never asked how I was sleeping. They never noticed the stack of old letters I kept rereading. They didn't ask about the leak I fixed last week or the rose bush that finally bloomed again. They didn't see me. And when someone stops seeing you, you start fading, even from yourself. But I wasn't ready to disappear. Not yet. It was a Saturday, early spring, the kind of day where the air smells like new grass and old rain. I had just come in from pruning the lilac bush, Marjorie's favorite, and found Todd and Samantha in the living room with a group of their friends, 5 of them, all laughing, drinks in hand, shoes kicked off like they owned the place. They hadn't told me they were coming. I stood in the doorway with my gloves still on, dirt under my nails, boots muddy from the yard. Samantha glanced at me, then quickly looked back at her phone. Todd waved a beer bottle in my direction and said, "You don't mind if we hang out here for a bit, do you? Our Wi-Fi was acting up." Bit? They'd been there for hours. I could see empty pizza boxes on the coffee table, dog hair clinging to the cushions, my old record player spinning music I didn't recognize. One of Todd's friends had their feet up on Marjorie's cedar chest, the one her father built, the same one we used to keep family photo albums in. I walked over calmly and asked him to move his feet. He didn't, just looked at Todd, then back at me, grinned and said, "Sorry, old man." Old man. I felt something in my chest go cold. Not hot, cold. A sinking kind of numb. Todd chuckled. "He's just joking, Dad. Don't be so serious." But the way he said Dad was like a formality, a title stripped of meaning. I turned to Samantha. "Why didn't you tell me you were bringing people over?" She sighed, exasperated. "We figured you wouldn't mind. It's just friends." "It's my house," I said quietly. Todd jumped in before she could respond. "For now. For now." He said it so casually, as if that wasn't the cruelest thing someone could say to a man standing in the home he built, with his own hands, with his wife, with love. I didn't say anything more. I turned around, walked back out the door and went to the shed. Sat there for almost an hour, just listening to the sounds of music and laughter through the walls. They left later that evening. No apology, no cleanup, just a "see you later" and the faint smell of cheap cologne in the hallway. The next morning I found the cedar chest scratched. Not deep, but enough. Enough to feel like a scar. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with my hands folded across my chest, staring at the ceiling, remembering the way Marjorie used to curl her fingers around mine in the dark. I wanted to hear her voice again, just once, just to ask her what she would do. A few days later, the real gut punch came. I was at the grocery store when I bumped into Denise from next door. Sweet woman, a bit nosy but always kind. She smiled, leaned in, and said, "I didn't know you were moving. That's such a big change at your age." I blinked. "I'm... what?" She looked confused. "Oh, I'm sorry. I just assumed. Todd was outside the other day talking to the landscaper. Said something about opening the layout for better resale value. I don't remember what I said to her. I think I just smiled, nodded, and walked away. Back home, I sat in the kitchen for nearly 2 hours. Didn't touch the groceries, didn't take off my jacket. I just sat there, staring at the table, the same one where Marjorie used to serve chicken pot pie with that chipped gravy boat she loved so much. They were planning something, behind my back. Not just jokes, not just hints. They were serious. That evening I asked Samantha to come by. Just her. No Todd. She showed up the next day wearing sunglasses even though it was nearly dusk. She walked in like it was a chore, like she'd just come from the gym. "I need to ask you something," I said, keeping my voice even. She sat at the edge of the armchair, arms crossed. "Okay. Are you planning to sell the house?" Her mouth opened, then shut. For a second I saw a flicker of guilt. Then she said, "Dad, you're not going to be around forever. We're just thinking ahead." I nodded slowly. "And you didn't think to include me in those thoughts?" She looked away. "You get overwhelmed lately. Todd and I were trying to take some of that stress off your plate." I laughed once, bitter and low. "By erasing me from the plans." "Dad, come on, don't be dramatic. You've got no mortgage, no major debt. It makes sense to start figuring out the future." She said it so cleanly, like I was an account to be closed, a spreadsheet to be reconciled. "You know what this house is?" I asked quietly. She rolled her eyes. "It's a house, Dad. It's walls and floors." "No," I said. "It's a life. It's love. It's your mother's breath still hanging in the curtains. It's your handprints under the porch paint. It's her garden. It's your childhood." She didn't respond. I stood, walked to the fireplace, picked up a small wooden frame. Samantha's kindergarten drawing. Her and me, holding hands under a crooked sun. "I kept everything," I whispered. "Even when you forgot." She left not long after that. Didn't hug me goodbye. Just said, "I didn't mean to hurt you," and closed the door behind her. But she had. They both had. And for the first time in my life, I started to wonder, what if they weren't ever going to stop? The next week, I started keeping my ears open, really open. I stopped filling silences with forgiveness. I stopped making excuses for their behavior. I started listening, watching, paying attention. It didn't take long before the truth started leaking through the cracks. It was a Wednesday afternoon, one of those gray days where time feels slower than usual. Todd had stopped by without calling, again. Said he needed to borrow the Wi-Fi while his home internet was getting fixed. He set up his laptop in my dining room like it was his office. Didn't ask if I needed the space. Didn't even say hello properly. Just walked in, plugged in, and got to work. I was in the kitchen peeling carrots for stew when I heard him talking. Not on the phone. Zoom, maybe. I couldn't see the screen, but his voice carried just enough. "Property's already in the family, so we're not worried about a purchase timeline." Pause. "Yeah, we'll probably start renovations early next year. Open floor plan, knock down that load-bearing wall, get a better view into the kitchen. We'll reconfigure the master suite, maybe turn the garage into a studio rental." Another pause, a laugh. "Sure, we'll get the old man settled first. Assisted living, maybe near the park. It'll be good for him." My hands stopped moving. Assisted living. Not because I was sick, not because I couldn't walk or dress or speak for myself, but because I was inconvenient. I leaned quietly into the archway and watched him from behind. He was smiling, relaxed, talking about my home like it was a project in a magazine spread, as if my memories were just blueprint obstacles to his ambitions. They left soon after. Todd stormed out. Samantha lingered in the doorway for a few seconds longer. Her face was soft, almost childlike again. But she didn't apologize. She didn't say thank you. She didn't say she loved me. She just said, "I hope you know what you're doing." And I did. Because in that quiet, bitter aftermath, something surprising happened. My neighbor Carl, an old army buddy, stopped by. Said he'd overheard Todd talking loudly in the driveway the week before. "I told the guys at poker night," Carl said. "None of us are surprised, but we're behind you." He handed me a small note. "You're not alone. Carl." And for the first time in weeks, I believed it. The office was small and smelled faintly of old leather and legal paper. Harold Jensen's place hadn't changed in 30 years. Same desk, same clunky brass lamp with the green glass shade, same dent in the corner from when his grandson knocked over the file cabinet during a snowball fight years ago. I remembered, because I was there. I'd helped install that very cabinet. Harold looked up from his paperwork when I walked in, glasses slipping halfway down his nose. "You look like a man who's finally made up his mind." "I have," I said, closing the door gently behind me. He nodded, slowly, knowingly. "And I take it this isn't just an update?" I sat down and took a long breath. "No, it's a rewrite." He didn't ask why, didn't need to. We'd been friends too long for explanations. Still, he leaned back in his chair and gave me a moment. "Marjorie always said you were too soft-hearted," he said. "She was right," I replied, "but I think I've run out of softness." Harold pulled out a yellow legal pad and clicked his pen. "Let's begin." It took 3 hours. We went through everything: my accounts, the deed, the retirement fund, the life insurance policy, which wasn't much, but it was something. The house, of course. The same house they were planning to gut and flip. The one with the creaky porch and the hand-dug garden beds. The one that held my whole life like a memory box. "I want the house to go to the shelter," I said. "The one on Route 18, Marjorie's place." Harold didn't flinch, just nodded and kept writing. "And I want to include a clause," I continued. "If anyone contests the will, everything, all of it, goes to charity. Nothing to the kids, not even a photograph." Now he paused, looked up. "You sure about that?" "I am." He tapped his pen against his thumb for a moment. "That's a strong clause. If Samantha challenges this and loses, she'll walk away with nothing." I nodded. "She already has." We went over the details twice, every line, every signature. I initialed every page. It felt less like signing paperwork and more like closing chapters, one by one. When we finished, Harold slid the documents into a thick envelope and handed it to me. "You want me to hold on to a copy?" "Yes, and give another to Carol down at the shelter. I trust her." He hesitated, then asked, "You think they'll fight it?" I let out a tired breath. "Todd will. Samantha. I don't know anymore." Harold didn't offer sympathy. That's not his way. But he reached across the desk, gripped my hand and gave it a firm squeeze. "Marjorie would be proud." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My throat was too tight. I walked out of that office into a crisp breeze that smelled like turning leaves and wood smoke, the kind of air Marjorie used to love. She'd always say, "You can smell change in the wind." And she was right. That night I didn't sleep much, not because I doubted my decision. Strangely, I didn't, not even a little, but because making that choice opened the floodgates of memory. I remembered Samantha as a toddler, clinging to my leg during thunderstorms. I remembered her letters from summer camp, always signed with hearts and smiley faces. I remembered holding her hand as she cried after her first breakup. How did we get from there to here? Maybe I failed somewhere along the line. Maybe I should have said no more often. Maybe I should have taught her what love looks like when it's not convenient. But even in those memories, something felt hollow now, like they belonged to someone else. I walked through the house around midnight, barefoot, letting the floor creak under me, the way it always had. I paused at every photo, every corner. I whispered a quiet apology to Marjorie, not because of what I was doing, but because I had let it go this far. I stopped in front of her tea tin. Inside, folded and faded, was a note she wrote me the year before she died. Just 4 words: protect what we built. She had always known. I poured myself a glass of water and stood by the kitchen window, watching the moonlight dust the yard with silver. I thought about all the dogs that might run through that garden someday, barking, rolling in the grass, sleeping under the lilacs. Marjorie would have liked that. The next morning, I drove to the shelter. Carol was out back with a gangly mutt who looked more bones than bark. When she saw me, her eyes lit up. "Well, look who it is," she said. "Come to meet your future roommates?" I laughed, the first real one in a while. "Maybe." We went inside. I handed her the envelope and said, "This is for you, for the dogs, for Marjorie." She opened it slowly, read the first page. Her hand flew to her mouth. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Just promise me one thing," I said. "Keep her name on the place, somewhere." She nodded, tears already gathering. "Of course, it'll be called Marjorie's house. I swear it." As I left the shelter that day, the sky cracked open with the faintest ray of sun. Not much, but enough. Enough to remind me that even when blood lets you down, love finds its way back. It happened on a Thursday morning, ordinary as any other. I had just finished my walk around the block, the same route Marjorie and I used to take every evening. I'd stopped to chat with old Mr. Clark about the weather, even helped him carry his trash to the curb. Nothing felt out of place. Not until I turned into my driveway and saw the boxes. Cardboard, 3 of them, labeled in black marker: master bedroom, linens, bathroom supplies, Dad's closet. They were stacked neatly by the garage door, like someone had taken the time to organize my life into categories. At first I thought I was dreaming. I even reached down, touched the edge of one box. It was real. It was taped shut. I walked into the house, heart racing slow and heavy. The door wasn't locked. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of lavender and bleach. Samantha stood at the top of the stairs, phone in hand, talking to someone. "Yeah, we're just getting things prepped early. He hasn't said yes yet, but it's only a matter of time." I didn't wait. "Prepped for what?" I asked. She jumped. The phone nearly slipped from her hand. "Dad, Jesus, you scared me." I didn't smile, didn't move. "What are the boxes for?" She swallowed. "We were just organizing some things. Todd thought it might be easier if we, started the process." "What process?" "The move," she said, gently, like she was talking to a child. "To the facility. We've already paid the deposit. It's non-refundable." I stared at her. Let the words hang between us. Deposit. Non-refundable. Move. "You packed up my bedroom," I said. She blinked, like she hadn't expected me to be upset. "Just the linens and a few things you won't need at the new place. We're not throwing anything out." I looked down the hall. My door was cracked open. I walked past her into the room I'd shared with Marjorie for nearly 40 years. The bed was stripped, the closet half empty. Her robe was gone from the hook behind the door. That was when something inside me snapped. Not loud, not violent, just final. like the last click of a lock turning. I turned back to Samantha. She was standing awkwardly, arms folded, like she was bracing for a storm. "You went through our room," I said. "You touched her things." She hesitated. "We thought it would be easier for you if—" "No," I cut in. "You didn't think about me at all." She opened her mouth, but no words came. I walked past her, down the stairs, into the living room where the photos still hung, where Marjorie's daffodil painting still sat above the mantel. Todd was there, lounging on my couch with a smug look that vanished the moment he saw my face. "You lied," I said to him. "You said we were just talking options. You never mentioned packing, or deposits, or stripping my room while I was out." He tried to stand. "Let's not get dramatic." "Don't," I said. "Don't patronize me in my own home." The word own landed hard. "You planned this," I continued. "The meetings, the suggestions, the measurements. You decided I was no longer useful and started clearing me out like an old appliance." Todd scoffed. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "No," I said. "I've made it too easy for too long." I walked to the cabinet and pulled out a folder, thick, neatly labeled. I had been ready for this. I had hoped I wouldn't need it, but I had been ready. "I want you both to leave," I said, holding the folder in my hand. Samantha, now at the bottom of the stairs, shook her head. "Dad—" "I want you to leave," I repeated. "And don't come back until you're ready to talk to me like a person, not a problem." Todd stepped forward. "You can't just—" "I can," I said. And I did. I walked to the front door, opened it wide. Out. Samantha didn't move at first. Her eyes searched mine, looking for softness, for hesitation. There was none left. She grabbed her purse. Todd muttered something under his breath, something cruel and cowardly, but he followed her. The door shut behind them with a finality I felt in my bones. I locked it. Then I sat down at the kitchen table, folder still in my lap, and cried. Not because I was sad, because I was tired, because I had wanted to believe they were better than this, because I had spent so many years loving them, protecting them, and in the end, all it took was an empty closet and a few cardboard boxes to show me the truth. That evening I gathered everything, documents, voice memos, photos of the boxes, and organized it into a binder. Then I called Harold. "It's time," I told him. "I want to make everything public. At the event." He didn't ask what event. He already knew. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I want them to know. I want everyone to know." There's a difference between vengeance and justice. I didn't want to hurt them. I just wanted the truth to be seen. And now the time for silence was over. It was Samantha's 40th birthday. Big event. Todd booked out the community center, hired a caterer, and even brought in a string quartet. The invitation had gone out to half the town, some friends, some family, and plenty of people who barely knew her but liked being near the idea of importance. I wasn't invited, not officially at least. I saw the flyer taped to the grocery store bulletin board. I overheard Denise next door talking about it on the phone, and Todd let it slip, half intentionally, when he came by to retrieve more boxes and mumbled something about needing to be out early for the party. I was supposed to stay home, quiet, forgotten, but I had no intention of doing that. I arrived 15 minutes after the event had started. Wore my best suit, the same one I wore when Marjorie and I renewed our vows. I trimmed my beard, polished my shoes, carried the binder in one hand and a calmness in my chest that surprised even me. The parking lot was full. I walked in through the side entrance like I had dozens of times before over the years. Church dinners, town halls, pancake fundraisers, we'd all gathered here for so many milestones. This time I wasn't there to celebrate. I was there to be heard. Inside, the lights were warm and the room buzzed with soft music and clinking glasses. A banner read, "Happy 40th, Samantha." Her face was flushed with champagne and flattery. Todd stood beside her like a politician, hand on her waist, charming the guests with his usual practiced ease. I walked in slowly. At first, no one noticed. I made it halfway across the room before the noise began to shift. Soft murmurs, then a few sharp glances. Someone tapped Samantha's shoulder and pointed. Her eyes found me. They widened, then narrowed. Todd turned next. His jaw tightened. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I walked up to the microphone just as the quartet took their break. I tapped it gently. Feedback hummed for a second, then silence. People turned. "Evening," I said, steady as stone. "I won't keep you long." Samantha began to move toward me. Todd grabbed her arm, shaking his head. "Let him speak," his body language said. "It'll look worse if we don't." So I spoke. "I'm not here to ruin a party," I said, "but I am here to correct a story." Murmurs moved through the crowd. "Many of you know me. You've seen me in this town for decades. You know the house I built, the family I raised, and the woman I loved. What you don't know is what's been happening behind closed doors." I opened the binder, slowly, deliberately. "For the past year, my daughter and her husband have been trying to move me out of my home, behind my back, without my consent. They packed my belongings while I was on a walk, made deposits at a facility I never visited, had conversations with realtors about flipping the home I shared with my late wife." A gasp. Two women near the snack table exchanged stunned glances. Todd stepped forward. "This isn't the time or the place." I looked at him calmly. "You chose the time. You chose the place. I'm just showing up, like I always did." He froze. I lifted a document from the binder. "This is my updated will," I continued. "Filed with my attorney, witnessed and signed. The house will not go to Samantha. It will not go to Todd. It will go to Marjorie's house, a dog shelter, where loyalty is still honored and love is not conditional." Now the room had fallen completely silent. I raised my daughter with love, with discipline, with open hands and a soft heart, and I failed somewhere. I failed to teach her that family isn't ownership, that love isn't inheritance. I turned to Samantha. "You once asked me if I knew what I was doing. I do now. I'm not punishing you. I'm freeing you from the burden of pretending to care." Her eyes were wide, her lips trembled, but still, no apology, just silence. I turned back to the crowd. "I don't want your sympathy. I just want to remind you, love is not a transaction, and growing old does not mean becoming invisible." With that, I stepped down. A few claps rose from the back, slow, unsure, but real. Carl from poker night, Denise with tears in her eyes, even Harold, who stood in the doorway with a quiet nod of approval. I didn't wait for more. I left through the same side door I came in. The evening air was cool, and the sky above was streaked with the last blush of sunset. My hands didn't shake, my heart didn't race. I had said what needed to be said, not for revenge, for dignity. Do you think the father made the right choice? Comment and don't forget to like and subscribe for more true life stories. When I got home from the party, the house felt unusually quiet, not empty, but still, like it was holding its breath with me. I placed the binder on the hall table, took off my shoes, and sat on the edge of the couch. I didn't turn on the lights. The moonlight through the curtains was enough. I just sat there, listening to the tick of the wall clock and the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. For the first time in a long while, I felt something I couldn't quite name. It wasn't victory. It wasn't relief. It was peace. But peace comes with echoes. All the years of effort, all the bedtime stories, the school plays, the scraped knees I kissed better. They didn't disappear. They hovered around me, like the scent of old wood in the walls, like Marjorie's voice in the hallway when the wind blew just right. I didn't sleep that night. Not deeply, anyway. I dozed here and there in my armchair, the one Marjorie always claimed was too lumpy for guests, but perfect for curling up in with a blanket and a book. I kept expecting the phone to ring, for Samantha to call, to yell, to cry, to say anything. But she didn't. The silence in the days that followed was thick. No knocks at the door, no texts, not even Todd's smug voice echoing through the living room. Just the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of settling wood. The house had grown used to them, had adjusted its rhythm to their footsteps, their presence. Now it was adjusting back. On Monday, I went for my usual walk, headed down the block with my hands in my coat pockets, nodding to familiar faces. People didn't say much. Some just stared, some nodded back with tight smiles, but I could feel it. The gossip was spreading. At the corner, Carl caught up with me. "You caused a storm, you know," he said, grinning. "Half the town's been talking since Saturday." "I figured," I said. He slowed his pace. "Lot of folks saying you embarrassed them, that it wasn't right to air that kind of laundry." "And the other half?" I asked. "They're saying you did what needed to be done." I nodded. We walked a little farther in silence. Then he added, "You're not wrong for wanting to be treated with respect, especially in your own home." That stuck with me all day, because that's what it really came down to. Not revenge, not even the inheritance, just respect. That evening I made tea, Marjorie's tin still half full, the label faded and curling at the corners. I sat on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders and watched the sun dip behind the trees. For a long time, I thought about what it meant to be a parent. We give so much, our time, our bodies, our energy, without expecting repayment. Love, when it's real, doesn't have a ledger. But I think somewhere along the way, I forgot to draw a line between unconditional love and unconditional permission. Maybe that was my mistake. On Wednesday, I got a knock at the door. Not Samantha, not Todd. It was Lily, my granddaughter. She looked older than I remembered, taller, sharper in the eyes. A teenager now, with a backpack slung over one shoulder and chipped purple nail polish on her fingers. "Mom doesn't know I'm here," she said quickly. I didn't say anything, just stepped aside and let her in. She walked through the house slowly, like she was remembering it room by room. She paused in the hallway, touched the frame of an old photo, her, age 5, sitting on my lap with a popsicle dripping down her shirt. "She's mad," Lily said, "really mad, but also kind of quiet, like she doesn't know what to do now." I nodded. "Neither do I." "She told me not to come," Lily said, "but I wanted to. I made us hot chocolate, Marjorie's old recipe with cinnamon and a pinch of salt. We sat at the kitchen table, our mugs steaming in front of us. She said, 'You're giving the house away.' 'I am.'" Lily didn't flinch. She just nodded, slowly. "I think that's kind of awesome," she said. "I mean, it's weird, but cool. Mom said it was crazy, but I don't think it is." I looked at her, truly looked. There was something in her face that reminded me of Samantha as a girl, but also something quieter, more thoughtful. "She ever tell you about the garden out back?" I asked. Lily smiled. "Only that it used to be full of bees." We went out there later, walked through the rows I'd let go wild in recent years. I showed her where Marjorie used to plant her sunflowers, where the lilac bush bloomed every spring, no matter how cruel the winter. She listened, really listened. And when she left that evening, she hugged me. Tight. No words, just warmth. After she was gone, I stood in the doorway for a long time. Maybe the future wouldn't be so empty after all. The idea came slowly, like fog lifting off a field at sunrise, quiet, steady, and undeniable. It started with a phone call. "Mr. Harlan, this is Carol from Marjorie's house. I read through the documents your lawyer delivered. I just, well, we're honored, truly. But I wanted to ask, are you sure?" I could hear the emotion in her voice. Gratitude, disbelief, a touch of awe. "I'm sure," I said. "Marjorie would have liked it this way." She exhaled, then chuckled softly. "Well then, we'd love for you to come by. Maybe we can talk about what this could look like." So I did. I drove down to the shelter that afternoon. The old farmhouse sat behind a chain-link fence with a painted wooden sign, "Marjorie's House, a place for the forgotten." Someone had already added the name. I stared at it for a long moment before walking in. Carol met me at the door with a clipboard and a dozen questions, but her eyes were warm, her tone gentle. "We've been at capacity for months," she said. "And the truth is, we've had to turn away more animals than we've taken in. But your house, that changes everything." We walked through the space together. I told her about the layout, the rooms, the sun that hits the kitchen floor just right in the morning. I showed her pictures I'd taken of the backyard, the garden, the porch where Marjorie used to drink her tea. Carol's mind worked fast. We could create 3 separate foster wings, maybe a small clinic room in the garage. Volunteers could stay in the upstairs bedrooms. The house would live again, not with buyers or contractors or real estate agents, but with wagging tails, muddy paws, and second chances. For the first time in years, I felt something bloom inside me. Not just peace, purpose. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and started sketching. Not blueprints, just ideas, notes, what the garage needed, which doors stuck, where the fence line needed reinforcement. It was like waking up from a long winter nap. The next morning, I drove to the hardware store and picked up supplies. Lumber, nails, paint. Not too much, just enough to get started. Carl stopped by when he saw me hauling plywood from the truck. "Finally fixing that fence?" he asked, grinning. Something like that. He helped me unload without asking questions, just like the old days. And when I told him what the house was becoming, he didn't even blink. "Need help with the dog run?" he asked. "I still owe you for helping with my roof back in '98. By Friday, it wasn't just Carl. Denise came over with gardening gloves and a flat of marigolds. Joe from church dropped off 2 cans of white paint and an old kennel he'd been keeping in his shed. Even Lily returned, this time with her school art supplies, saying, "I want to paint a sign, something people can see from the road." And just like that, the house wasn't quiet anymore. There were hammer sounds again, laughter again, life again. I moved room by room, clearing old furniture, patching walls, oiling hinges. Every board I lifted reminded me of the past, but didn't weigh me down anymore. It felt like turning grief into action, like every swing of the hammer was a conversation with Marjorie. "You see this?" I whispered one afternoon, wiping sweat from my brow. "You always said you wanted dogs everywhere." Some days, I sat on the porch afterward, watching the sun dip behind the lilac bush, sipping sweet tea and listening to the world start to hum again. Not in the way it used to, but in a way that felt honest, earned. Lily kept coming by after school. She painted a mural along the back wall, dogs of all shapes and sizes, their eyes bright, their tails wagging. She added a quote beneath it in looping letters: "Kindness is the only legacy worth leaving." When I asked her where she found the words, she just smiled. "You said them, at the party." Eventually, Carol came with her team for the walkthrough. They marveled at the space, Marjorie's old reading room turned into a soft playroom for shy rescues, the garden now lined with dog-safe herbs, the back porch reinforced for supervised outdoor visits. "I've never seen anything like this," she said, her eyes misty. "This isn't just a shelter. This is a home." And it was. Not just for the dogs. For me. I still slept in my bedroom, still made Marjorie's tea, still did the crossword every morning, though I let myself pencil in the wrong answers sometimes. But now, the house echoed with barks and laughter, footsteps and kindness. I no longer waited for Samantha or Todd to call. I had stopped hoping for something that wasn't coming. Instead, I focused on what was here, what had stayed, what had come back. Real people, real connection, real care. The kind of family you don't inherit, but build. The first dog to arrive was named Milo. He was a wiry little thing, part terrier, part who knows what, with nervous eyes and a tail that wagged like it wasn't sure whether to trust happiness just yet. Carol brought him over personally, said he'd been rescued from a backyard breeder and had never lived inside a home before. The moment Milo stepped over the threshold, he paused, sniffed the air, took 2 cautious steps and looked up at me. "Welcome home," I said. He blinked, then did something I didn't expect. He came straight over and leaned against my leg, not like a jumpy pup or a needy stray, but like he knew. Like he could feel the history in the floorboards, the love still lingering in the walls. From that day on, things changed fast. Dogs came in waves, 2 one week, 5 the next. Some shy, some boisterous, all in need of a second chance. Volunteers flowed in too. Carol ran the show with a clipboard and a whistle, and somehow made sense of the chaos. We turned the guest room into a quiet zone for recovering animals. The old sunroom where Marjorie once kept her fern collection became the playroom, filled with squeaky toys and soft rugs. My tools found a new life-building ramps for older dogs with stiff joints. Even the porch got new screens and fresh paint, courtesy of Carl and a couple of kids from the high school shop class. And through it all, the house came alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. Every morning I brewed coffee and poured 2 mugs, one for me, one for the memory of Marjorie. I'd sit by the kitchen window and watch dogs chase each other in the yard, their bodies full of joy. Sometimes I'd whisper, "You see this, hun? We did it." The silence that used to haunt the hallways was replaced by soft panting, toenails clicking on hardwood, laughter from volunteers, and the gentle creak of doors opening, not to take things away, but to bring life in. I didn't miss the old quiet. One afternoon I found Lily sitting in the garden, notebook in her lap, surrounded by 3 dogs napping in the sun. "You skipping school?" I teased. She rolled her eyes. "I'm on break. Creative writing assignment." "Let me guess. Stories about dogs?" She grinned. "Maybe." She visited often now, not because her mom asked her to, not even because I asked. She just came. Sometimes she'd help bathe the puppies or paint more signs. Other times we'd just sit together, watching the yard in companionable silence. One evening she asked, "Do you miss them?" It took me a while to answer. "I miss who they were," I said, "but not who they became." She nodded like she understood. And maybe she did. The strangest part? I didn't feel bitter. Not anymore. The sadness still came in waves. Grief doesn't leave neatly, but I wasn't drowning in it. I had found something new. People started stopping by, not just to adopt a dog, but to sit, to talk, to be part of something. Carol began hosting Sunday morning meetups, coffee, biscuits, and dog cuddles. Someone donated a bench for the front yard with a brass plate that read, "For those who give without expecting anything in return." I started seeing the same faces every week. Carl, Denise, the younger couple from down the street, two retired teachers who brought homemade treats for the dogs and stayed to sweep the floor. We shared stories, losses, laughter, even silence when that's all we had to give. It felt like family, not the kind you're born into, but the kind you choose, the kind that chooses you back. One morning, Lily came in holding an envelope. "It's from Mom," she said, handing it to me. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a card, simple, no glitter or flowers, just her handwriting. Dad. I saw the photos. I didn't know how to say it in person, but the house looks beautiful. And right. I hope the dogs are happy. Lily says you're doing well. I'm glad. I really am. I'm sorry I forgot what it all meant. Sam. I stared at the card for a long time. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt still. Because maybe forgiveness isn't always loud. Maybe it's not even always mutual. But sometimes, a quiet note in shaky handwriting is enough to soften something that's been hard for too long. I didn't write back, not yet. But I left the card on the mantel next to Marjorie's photo. It belonged there. That evening, I sat on the porch with Milo curled at my feet and the stars blinking overhead. The house behind me was filled with light, with movement, with laughter. Chosen family, Marjorie's house. Ours now, not by blood, but by heart. It was late October when she came. The leaves had already turned, blanketing the front yard in gold and rust. The wind carried that early bite of winter, the kind that made the windows whistle and the dogs curl a little tighter in their beds. I was out back, raking the last of the leaves into piles for the puppies to jump in. Milo, as usual, supervised with a tennis ball in his mouth and not a single intention of sharing it. I heard the crunch of tires on gravel first, then the sound of a car door, then silence. When I turned the corner, there she was, Samantha, standing at the edge of the porch steps like she was waiting for permission to approach. She looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, but emotionally, like the weight of everything we hadn't said had finally caught up to her. She wasn't dressed for a long visit, no coat, just a sweater and jeans, car keys clutched tight in one hand. Her eyes darted around, taking in the painted shutters, the fresh fence, the mural Lily had finished just last week. "I wasn't sure if I should come," she said. I leaned the rake against the wall. "But you did." She nodded, glancing at Milo, who had trotted over to sniff her shoes. "He's cute," she said softly. "His name's Milo. He thinks he runs the place." A faint smile touched her lips, then disappeared just as quickly. "I got your note," I said. "I figured." She shifted her weight. "Lily told me a lot, about everything, about what I missed." There was a long pause between us, not angry, not cold, just full of what couldn't be undone. "You were right," she said, voice low, "about all of it." I didn't answer. I let him turn this into a transaction. I let myself believe that love was something owed, not something earned. I studied her face. She looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from regret. "I didn't come to ask for anything," she added. "Not forgiveness, not money, nothing. I needed to see it, to see what you made." I motioned toward the porch. "You can come in, if you want." She hesitated, then walked up slowly, sitting on the far end of the bench while I took my usual spot near the window. For a few minutes we said nothing, just sat. Dogs barked faintly from the backyard. The wind moved the trees. Somewhere inside, a volunteer was humming while refilling water bowls. "I think about Mom a lot lately," Samantha said. "So do I." "She'd be proud of this, of you." "I hope so." "She'd probably tell me to pull my head out of the sand," she added with a dry laugh. I didn't laugh, but I didn't disagree either. She turned toward me, finally meeting my eyes. "I never meant to hurt you." "I know," I said, "but you did." She nodded, took a breath like she had more to say, but it never came. Instead, she stood. "I won't keep you. I needed to face it." She started to walk toward the steps, then paused. "If Lily keeps coming by, is that okay?" "Of course," I said. "She's always welcome." She looked down, nodding once. Her hands trembled slightly. "Dad," she whispered, "I don't expect you to forgive me, but thank you for not shutting the door." I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Some doors don't close. They just creak for a while." She smiled, really smiled, for the first time in years. It was small, but it was there. And then she was gone. The car pulled away slowly, no hurry, no drama, just a quiet goodbye. I sat there a long while after she left. Did I feel healed? Not completely. Did I feel whole? Closer. But I felt something else too. Something gentle. Closure. Not the kind you demand. The kind that arrives on soft feet, like an old friend you thought you'd never see again. I turned to Milo, still chewing his tennis ball like it owed him rent. "Well," I said, "I guess some stories aren't over. They just change chapters." He sneezed, which I took as agreement. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the porch. I stood, stretched my back, and walked toward the door. The house behind me wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to stories now, to second chances, to wagging tails and warm hands and people who showed up, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Have you ever had to choose dignity over family ties? Share your story in the comments. The ribbon cutting was on a Sunday. Carol had insisted on it, said the town deserved to see what the place had become. I wasn't sure I wanted a big fuss, but in the end, I agreed. Not for me, for Marjorie. The sun was out, casting a golden warmth over the porch. Fall colors framed the property like something out of a painting, fiery maples, amber oaks, and a sky so blue it looked borrowed. A small crowd gathered, volunteers, neighbors, a few folks from the council. Lily stood up front with a clipboard and a proud grin. Carl wore a tie for the first time in 30 years. Even Denise brought a tray of oatmeal cookies and insisted on setting up a table with cider. Carol stood beside me holding the big pair of scissors. "Ready, Mr. Harlan?" I nodded. She cleared her throat. "Welcome, everyone, to the grand opening of Marjorie's house. Not just a shelter, but a home. For dogs, for people, for anyone who's ever felt forgotten." Applause. Not loud, not raucous, but genuine. I saw it in their eyes. Lily stepped up next. "This place is proof that second chances are real, that one person's kindness can ripple across an entire community. My grandpa gave us that chance. He gave us this house, and now we get to fill it with love." She looked over at me then, eyes shining. "And Grandma Marjorie, this one's for you." We cut the ribbon together. Me, Carol, Lily. The crowd clapped, the dogs barked, and the wind carried it all up into the trees like a blessing. Inside, the rooms were buzzing with life. The foyer had become a welcoming space, filled with framed photos of adopted dogs and their new families. Someone had even hung a painted portrait of Marjorie, smiling, hands in her garden, sun hat perched lopsided on her head. The old dining room now held a bulletin board of handwritten thank you notes. One read, "Thank you for giving me a place to start over." The kitchen smelled of cinnamon biscuits baking for the Adoption Day open house. Volunteers in matching aprons moved through the space like they'd lived there for years. Out back, kids laughed as puppies bounded through leaf piles. Seniors in folding chairs petted old, gentle dogs lying in the sun. Carl was grilling hot dogs, proudly pointing out the new fence line to anyone who'd listen. I wandered slowly through the house. Every step stirred a memory, Samantha's 8th birthday, the Thanksgiving where Marjorie burnt the pie but everyone ate it anyway, the rainy night she taught Lily how to make hot cocoa from scratch. But those memories didn't ache anymore. They warmed. They glowed. In the front room, the one that used to be our library, someone had set up a quiet space, a plush chair, a stack of books, a soft rug. On the wall, a simple plaque. This room is dedicated to the quiet strength of Marjorie Harlan. May all who sit here feel safe, seen, and loved. I sat in that chair for a while, letting the hum of life wash over me. Volunteers passed by, children laughed outside, dogs barked in playful choruses, and in all that movement, all that energy, I felt Marjorie, not as a memory, as a presence. Later in the afternoon, Lily found me. She handed me a small wrapped box. "For you," she said. Inside was a keychain, wood-burned, simple. It read, "Still the man who builds things." I held it in my hands for a long moment. "You made this?" She nodded. "With Mom. She helped sand it." I looked up at her. "She's okay." "She's trying," Lily said. "She still doesn't know what to say, but she wanted to make sure you got this." I didn't say much, just held the keychain and let the silence speak for us. As the day wound down, the guests thinned out. Carol turned off the coffee urn. Carl loaded chairs into his truck. A tired golden retriever fell asleep under the porch swing. I stayed behind to lock up. In the hallway, I paused at the photo wall. So many faces, so many tales. I added one more photo, me and Marjorie. Black and white, worn at the corners, her laughing as I tried to lift her off her feet on our wedding day. I pinned it right in the center. The house no longer belonged to bloodlines or legal claims. It belonged to kindness, to purpose, to memory, and to what rises after. I stepped out onto the porch, the last light of the day casting long shadows over the lawn. Milo sat beside me, tail gently thumping. "Well, old boy," I said, patting his head, "I think we did all right." He yawned and rested his chin on my boot. I looked up at the stars, at the sky that had watched me grow old, make mistakes, find my way back. "Marjorie," I whispered, "your house lives again." And this time, it was full of all the right things.